What's going on, everyone, and welcome back. So today was supposed to be a episode on arrays, so that we can manipulate arrays inside of the editor, and I got a lot of the programming done for it, but I ran into a snag whenever I got to actually getting them visible inside of the uh, editor, inside of the inspector. And the reason is because the way that we do behavior attributes, we store the uh, fields in there, and inside of an array is not a field. So I know kind of how I can get it working, but it's going to be totally outside of the scope of this tutorial series. So I'm going to have to skip over arrays, which I mean isn't really that big of a deal, really. But I'll have to get to them whenever I start doing live streaming. And I'll kind of show you some of the stuff. I mean, it's pretty straightforward, really, except for the editor just got snagged up. Let's see here. We will get to this here in a minute. This is actually what this episode is about. Okay, so arrays. It's basically the same as, a variable, except for right here I remove the data first. I set the array, and you don't have to do any of this because, like I just said, this is outside of the scope of the tutorial. But I'm just going to go ahead and show the code that I have so far, because I actually removed some of the editor code that I was working on just because it's not doable at this moment. But I created a new function just called setArray, and then we just continue, just like how we do everything else. And the setArray method, it's pretty simple. Like the saving and loading of the array inside of the scene file is perfectly fine. No issues at all. Like, you can save it and load it just super easy. It's, like I said, just the editor. That's completely it. So let's see here. Set array, we take in an object, a field name, the list of data that we're currently sitting at, and the size of the array. And really all it is just getting the field. If the field is null, we're just returning out of it. And then we're getting the component type, and then comparing it to what type it is. Now, whenever I was testing this, I only got to the integer class, just so that I could just do one class at first, and then whenever I got it working, I was just going to slam it all in there. And since I couldn't get past the editor part, don't get me wrong, integers I actually got working in the editor. It was great. But whenever you get to custom classes, that's where the big issue is, because if you have an array of custom classes, you have no way of telling how big the area needs to be to actually render everything onto the screen. And yeah, that's where I stopped. But so right here we're checking if the type is an integer, and then we're creating a new integer array of the size that we passed in. We're just looping through, looping for the amount of times our size is. We're getting the string in this data, and then we're just setting that data in the array. And then removing the current string that we've iterated to in the data field, and then setting the array. It's super straightforward. Inside of editor, whenever we are, let's see here, where's the right variable, right class, right component, save scene. It's under right variable. Oh yeah, it's right here. I already commented it out. So it's basically just this right here. And it's commented out just so that I know, like, yeah, that's what's going on. The code works perfectly fine. So right here, just checking to see if the variable is of type array. And to make sure that it's not an array of an array, right here, we're checking if the component type is an array, which component type is the type of value inside of the array. So if it's an array inside of it, then we're just going to return out. But right here, we're just storing the class, storing the type, and then we're just doing this code right here. And it's basically just a repeat. It's a copy of itself on every single one of these lines. And the reason why we have to do that is because primitives are a pain. Primitives are not objects, so we cannot treat them as objects. See, like right here, we're saying if it's not a primitive, then we could just create an object array. You can't do that with with primitives. So in a sense, right here, I'll just do one because they're all exactly the same. You just change it from an int array to a byte array or a string array. So if the type is an integer.class, then I'm just creating an int array, and it's going to be equal to int array f.get 0, and then we're just writing in this right here, which is basically just writing it saying that it is an array, just like how we did on the last episode for classes, how this would just be a C. And then we're passing in the name of the variable and then the length of the array, because that's really all the information that we need. And then we are looping through for the size of the array, and then we're basically just writing the element in there and tabbing it over just like how we did the classes. So it's almost identical. And then we're saying passing in the information. So this would be element 0, element 1, element 2. So this part right here really doesn't matter. It's just, it makes it look good whenever you're reading it. That's really the only reason why it's there. And then right here, we're just passing in the data inside of the parentheses, just like how we do classes. And same thing goes for all those. So here we're checking if it is not a primitive. And if it's not a primitive, then we're just creating an object array and then we're writing it out just like how we do right here on all these, and then looping through, and then we're saying object current, which is the current one that we're iterating to. We're checking to see if it's a class, and if it's a class, we're going to call the write class method and then pass in element I or element 0, element 1, blah blah. So we have something to look at. If it is if it's an instance of engine.object, then we're going to check if it's null, and if it's null, we're just going to write in null, just like how we did before, and all this. And this code right here is basically just copied from down here. I just copied that and just pasted it up here because it's exactly the same thing. It's just inside of the array. And that is where I stopped. Well, that's not really where I stopped. I kept going, but I deleted up to that point. Just because I couldn't go any further within the editor. So now on to what this episode is about. And this episode is about instancing. Now, I've talked about this in the past, and as you can tell, I had a bunch of stuff going on. I tried to do this, and I put my heart and soul into it, and it fell through whenever I got to the editor. So I had to basically bum rush this just so that I can get you guys something out, because I don't want to skip over an episode because, well, I hit every Sunday. I don't really care what's going on. So in here, we are doing instances, which is, I will go ahead and show you the instance IDs. So each object has its own ID. So for this game object, here's the ID for that one, here's the ID for that one, and so on and so on. Now, this is a game object variable, so instead of passing in the name like how I think I had it before, instead of passing in the name, we're passing in the instance ID, because whenever we load a scene, we don't want to find it by the name, we want to find it by the identification number. The same thing goes for the behavior test, or for a behavior. So for the behavior, we don't care what the name of the freaking behavior is. We only care about the identification number of the object that has that behavior attached. That way we can, whenever we load the scene, we look for the object, and then we set the component that is attached to that game object. I don't know. It might be, it's easier than what I'm probably, how I'm saying it. But yeah, I mean, it's very simple. So how we're going to write this is, let's see here, is array. So inside of editor, what we're going to do is we're going to write it, because we always write first before we load, because, well, you can't load anything without data that has been saved. So where are you? I think it is right All right. So right down here, we have else if it's assignable to custom class. And right below that, we put basically the exact same thing, except for its object. And I think before it had this line and then like these two lines or something. So inside of here, we're basically just calling this line like normal. And then right afterwards, we're going to say else if it's a game object. So if it's a game object, then we need to get it and cache it as a game object, whether it's null or an actual game object. And then we're going to write it. So we're going to say fw.write starter plus v f.getName bullcrap baloney, and we're going to say plus go.instance id, which before it just said f.getName. We need to say go.instance id. Let's see here. Or wait, it said I don't know. All the other ones say I think like go.getName or go.something. All right, so whatever. Moving on. Here we're gonna check if it is a class, like a logic behavior. And if it's a logic behavior, we're going to do the exact same thing as what we did over here, except for it's no longer a engine.object, it is a logic behavior. Even though logic behavior goes into engine.object, the reason why we have to do it this way instead of just putting them all up here is because of this line right here. We want the behavior's game object's instance ID, not the current game object that we're onto. And that's the reason why we have to write it like that. But besides that, now it should write just like how it does before. And we'll write it how it does before with the instance ID in place of the name. And let's see here. I didn't show this. So right now you may have some errors or something. And the reason is because I moved this line right here. Inside of engine.object, I placed this line. And then I removed it from the GameObject class. Oh, come on. So I just removed it from the GameObject class. So up here there was like an ID variable, and then over here I was setting IDs. And what is it that find object by ID using this. If g.instanceID.equals s, then return. So that is that. Just in case you were wondering. What else did I do? So that writes it in the place of the name. Where is the actual game object itself? Right, here we go. So at the end of this, on right transform, we need line plus equals, in parentheses, ID equals g dot instance ID, and then that baloney crap to close it off. And that right there finishes it. So now it'll write exactly how we have it, or how I showed you in here. So now it'll write exactly like this. It'll write the ID at the end of the game object, and then will write the instance ID in the game object variable, and inside of the behavior variable it'll write the attached game object's ID, whatever. So now it's time to actually read this in. So inside of Scene Manager, oh, I did have to do this. I completely forgot. Before we move on, I had to actually add this in, this line right here. We did not have, or I didn't put float. Like, I did all of these things, but I did not put a float for some reason, and it was messing me up. We also need to do like doubles and bytes and stuff like that, but we won't get to that. You don't really use that all the time, but floats are like something that's used quite often. And I believe it's the same way for saving. Let's see here. Right variable, primitive. So that's if it's a string. That if it's a vector too. Oh, maybe not. Okay. So at the very end here, this is pretty simple. So I just put else if data type dot equals game object, then f dot set o game object dot find object by ID, and then passing in the input. And then else if it is a logic behavior, then I'm saying game object go equals game object dot find object by ID input, just like right there. And then we're saying if the game object does not equal null, so if a game object was found, then we're going to call f.set o go.get component data type. So that's pretty simple to set the variables. And up here, whenever we create a game object, we're just going to call g.instanceID split 9. And yeah, I think that is pretty much it. Let me make sure. Oh yeah, that's right. So doing this also fixes, so it's not only just about variables, so that whenever you're saving and loading, that that you find the right game object or find the right behavior that is attached. What it also fixes is inside of the project panel. If you remember correctly, inside of the project panel, whenever you click on something, it will select it, but we no longer have that box showing that it is selected. And that's something that has been fixed. So, asset.instance_id right here. So inside of render asset types, it's going to say if selected does not equal null, then this line right here, before it was like if some name equaled another name or something, we're just going to call asset.instance_id.equals selected.instance_id, and that'll fix our selection issue. So in here, I made a little test. Basically, in the update loop, I'm saying if go equals null, then go equals GameObject.find new GameObject. And that's just to set this variable up here. And for right here, I'm saying if behavior equals null, then behavior test equals another test, GameObject.find behavior test.getComponent another test. So that basically just finds the game object in the scene that has the behavior or the another test script attached to it, and then sets it up here. That's just so that I can actually test it, because one issue that we do have right now, and I will show you this. Like all of our dragging and dropping, whatever, all of it works perfectly fine. Even with game objects and whatnot. What I wanted to add was the ability to, because there's behavior test. Here's new game object, which has another test that is this another test, because I already had it saved that way. So with Go, I can drop anything in there. Everything works perfectly. Now, with this is the game object that has another test attached to it, and it found it perfectly whenever we loaded the scene. Well, if I just drag this in here, oh, I guess it did set it, but or it's not doing anything actually. Like it won't find anything. And that's because I haven't finished it yet. Is pretty much why. It's because, like I said, I just kind of rushed through this just to give you guys something on Sunday, like how I always want to. So down here in the GUI, what it is inside of the app, or inside of the object field, all this is normal, saying if drag does not equal null. And right here, we're saying if drag.getClass equals type, then we're going to return dragged. Just like how we did before. Like that line should already be there. And then right here, we're saying else if drag.getClass equals GameObject.class, and type equals logic behavior.type, which that line right there works perfectly. And I was actually trying to finish it up really quick before it got too late so I can go ahead and post it, and I hit another brick wall right here. And maybe I can figure it out, maybe I won't. We'll see, but I have work in progress for setting components. And that is because I don't really know exactly how I'm going to do this. So we're currently dragging a game object. We have a logic behavior object field. I want to drop that game object onto a logic behavior object field, and then it automatically pull that logic behavior that is attached onto that game object, if it exists, and place it inside of that field. And I'm having issues trying to actually do that. And the reason is I don't think I have the information being passed in that I require to actually do that. Because yes, I know that it's a logic behavior. Yes, I know that it's a game object that I'm dragging, but I need the actual logic behavior name. So if this is, say, another test that I'm trying to put over here, then I need to know how I'm going to pull that logic behavior off, because, well, the type is logic behavior. The type isn't like test or another test or whatever. The test is, or the class is logic behavior. So I'm trying to find a way to actually tell myself, or tell the program, that it is a specific behavior name instead of just bare logic behavior, because I don't want to just grab the first behavior that's attached to the game object. I want a specific one. And this right here would actually have that, but only if it is not null already. So say there's already an object in that field, then I would be able to set it, because O is not null, so I can actually grab the class name from the object, and that's the issue there. I don't think I did anything special in here. Inspector. I think this is new as well. Some of these I actually had to do engine.object or Java's object. So if you're having issues saying that something cannot be converted into another object, so engine.object cannot be Java's object or whatever, just make sure you put the actual thing, whether it's engine.object or java.lang.object. So I think this may be new. Don't really know. I'm pretty sure it is though. So I'm just doing the normal stuff. But this right here is I believe, what is having the issue. Oh, this is what's actually passing in the information for the object field. Because before, apparently, we did not have a logic behavior field. So it was just doing this field right here, just a text field. So this code right here will actually create that object field. So we're getting the behavior from the field. We're saying object O equals GUI.object field, passing the same rect that we have everywhere else. Saying bf.getName like everywhere else. And then we're passing in behavior and logicBehavior.class. That's what I was telling you about right here. So if I was able to pass in the actual name or the actual class type instead of just logic behavior, because I guess for some reason it doesn't like to pass in field.getType. So if I pass in logicBehavior.class, what I did was I tried to say, what is it? Yes, bf.field.get class dot get dot get type. I don't think it actually let me do that. Oh, well, apparently it's letting me do it now. Maybe my computer was just being stupid earlier and throwing errors where it shouldn't be getting thrown. Okay, set that back to what it was. There we go. And I will tinker around with this some other time. I'm gonna have to close a bunch of stuff or something because this computer is just getting, yeah, I have like Epic and all kinds of crap open. Go away. Okay. Yeah, so as you can tell, that's where the issue is. So if that works just fine and I can actually pass in the logic, the actual behavior's name or type instead of just straight logic behavior, then that would be great. That would work perfectly. All right, so I think that is it. I'm pretty sure. So as you can tell, whenever we run this, come on, Pokey. I will just show off the that it's actually selecting like how it should. Begin. Okay, so now it is selecting like how it's supposed to, like how it was before. Before we went to the whole, what is it, new instance for the inspector instead of just passing in the whole thing. And then some other time we need to get to this whole save thing, but we will hit it. I know this is not really much of a tutorial episode. It's more of just a kind of slap together, but it's something that needed to be done. So now we can actually do uh, instance grabbing, instance setting. Um, we can grab the instance that we're supposed to have instead of just grabbing some random one that has the same name. So that is great. And there's only a couple more episodes left. Probably, I don't know, 3 or something before I take this thing to live stream instead of strictly the whole tutorial thing, because I don't know. Tutorials are okay, but it's just so hard to keep up on everything because you only have a small window to actually do it, and want to I want to do everything real time. Like, that's what I like doing. And things like this I can't because, it takes a couple of hours to do it. Uh, to actually get it right because you're going through so many different data types and like scrolling through fields and all kinds of crazy stuff, and that's what takes so long, is getting that to work correctly. And I won't have those issues whenever I do it on live stream versus in a tutorial series. So yeah, I'm super ready for that because I'm getting kind of burn out on the whole only 1 hour of work a week crap, because this has been going on for about a year. Yeah, I think over a year now. And like, I should have been completely done with this by now, but we will get to that in the other series. So thanks for watching, and next time we will probably get into collision detection and collision resolution, and go ahead and bust that out of the way. And after that, maybe some tinkering to get something working better or something. I don't know. And then after that, we're moving straight into compiling the project into a game instead of just the editor. So, kind of looking forward to that because I'm so ready to just tear through this thing and optimize it and, do my thing. So, I will see you next time. Have a great week, guys.